Hey, how's it going here? It is Political Integrity News, and today I figured I would give you a breakdown of the debate. So we're going to take this into a few different videos and just go by the topic questions starting from the beginning. And we're just going to cover that topic. And when they go into a new topic, that's going to be a whole new video. So it's not an entire 2 to 3 hour video that you have to watch. You can pick and choose the topics that you want to hear, or you can end up watching them all throughout the course of time that you have. But we're going to call out the facts, the lies, and everything else that happened within this debate so you can make a critical decision on voting and everything going on with this election, because the news, they don't do this. It takes others to do this, and not everyone is going to research any of this for themselves. So without further ado, let's start with the first question and topic at hand.
Get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again, and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her, because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
Okay, so let's speak to this. First, it's already been debunked by many places. Project 2025 has nothing to do with Trump or JD Vance. There may be some people that were in the former Trump administration that are no longer in the Trump administration that are part of Project 2025, but they have nothing to do with it. His policies are called Agenda 47. It's listed on his site. He has debunked it several times with many different media outlets debunking the claim that he has anything to do with it. That needs to be said, and everyone there should have immediately told Kamala Harris, stop the BS, because Trump has nothing to do with that. Next, let's talk about these tariffs. So I'm going to bring up a site here, taxfoundation.org. The key findings was that Trump administration imposed nearly $80 billion worth of new tax on Americans by levying tariffs on thousands of products. But did you see any major increase between 2018 and 19 on products? I didn't. And then it says that the Biden administration has kept most of those. But then what it tells you is in May of 2024, they announced a tariff hike on additional 18 billion of Chinese goods, which includes semiconductors, electric vehicles, and additional 3.6 billion. So they said we got 18 billion from Chinese goods. Now we're going to include more stuff in hiking up the prices and getting an additional 3.6 billion. So how could she say anything about tariffs when the tariffs that the Trump administration opposed actually didn't have any real major effect on inflation, but they themselves imposed tariffs while we've had the largest inflation in modern US history, if not all of US history. They say we estimate the Trump-Biden tariffs will reduce long-run GDP by 0.2%. So she also talks about chips. And it has been, and I mean, you can look it up, like Apple, Intel, all these places that are making chips, and places that make them, Qualcomm and stuff like that, for others. They haven't been making them in the US. Not even under Trump were hardly anyone making chips in the US. Apple goes to other countries over in Asia. They get their chips made in countries where it's much cheaper to manufacture the chip than it would be to manufacture the chip in the US. So to make these claims that Trump just gave away all these chips to China in this trade war, it's not a thing. During the Biden administration, he was giving tax breaks to encourage chip manufacturing. Why? Because at the time, we had a increase and need for more chips. You had electric vehicles and other vehicles being made that they didn't have the chips for. They literally had the Ford F-150 Lightning, the new one with the electric engine, not the one that was a supercharged engine of the past, sitting in parking lots waiting for chips. So they encouraged more chip manufacturing in the US, which we did not have. So that is heavily debunked. And to talk about the tariffs that Trump wants to administer, what Harris isn't telling you is that Trump wants no income tax federally. So let's look at this. Federal income tax bracket. Let's look at the rates in bracket. So a 10% is taxable income from 0 to 11,000. So if you're making 11,000, that means 10% you're going to be paying $1,100. You get to save $1,100. 12%, and so forth. So what is it? the let's look at the average income. Uh nope, that's tax rate. Income. It was 37 2023. So 58,000 per year. Let's just go as 58,000 per year. That might not be the exact income. Oh, wait here. In 2022 paid 13,000. So let's say that someone maybe made more and rounded up to 14,000. They're saving $14,000 from no federal income. The tariffs are going on all goods and services from other countries. It's not a sales tax. If they're taxing a company that is bringing products in from China, like your robot that vacuums your house, that tariff is not going to be on your groceries like chicken, beef, milk, things like that. Those are all here in the US. You're not going to have a tariff on that. So that means you'll have $14,000 more per year for those groceries. Whereas if you want your luxury item, that may cost you more. You want to go get that product from China. You know, they make a smart toilet and you want to have a smart toilet in your house versus a product that would be an American made regular toilet. You might pay more for it. That's the tariff of it. It's things that are brought in that aren't made in the US. So you're going to earn more per year, but they're going to collect more on the things that people that can afford it will be buying. And it's going to bring in more money. Plain and simple. So it's going to bring in more money, but those that aren't buying all those luxury products are going to save. They're going to have more money to spend. You're going to be able to go to the grocery and you're going to be able to afford it. Like Trump said, he said people aren't buying the bacon, the cereal, things like that. Yeah, not everyone. Why? Because is cereal a necessity? Is bacon a necessity? It's not a necessity to live. So what people are looking at is, hey, I got, 200, 150 for groceries for my family of 4 for the whole week. Do I really need this $3-4 box of cereal, or can I find a substitute or a breakfast item that is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper and will still give my family the nutrition it needs for breakfast? Like, that's what people are looking at right now. They're pinching pennies, and it has been reported week after week that people are going into debt because of inflation. Debt's growing at an alarming pace. Delinquent payments include inflation. And there have been many more. More Americans are falling behind on credit card bills. People are going into substantial debt and they're struggling because of inflation. So JD Vance already spoke. They want to give a child tax credit. They want to give you your federal income tax back. And they want you to put it to where it helps your family the most. And when she said that Trump doesn't think of Americans, what is making America great again? What is trying to help America? That's helping the people. But what did her administration with Biden, the Biden-Harris administration, do when they took office? They got rid of his executive orders and they went to other countries and they said America is back. The Bank of America is back for the world. They touted out about how they're going to help the world. That's not putting Americans first. And remember, I made a video of this. Trump is the only modern day president that lost money during his presidency. So how does Trump look out for himself and these billionaires when he lost money? And she wants to tout out about 4 years ago, we had a pandemic. Things were down everywhere. But we managed to come out of it the best we could. And get this, things were trending up. When Trump was in office at the end of his term, things were trending up. Things were getting better slowly. But before the pandemic, we didn't have inflation. We had a great economy. Things were affordable for what people made. And it was way better off. It only got to the point of the economy the way it is now and inflation when Biden took over. He got rid of executive orders. Illegal immigration went sky high. And then we had more COVID deaths than ever before when they were trending down. And now we have all of these issues. Harris is right there with them. Don't forget that. The jobs came back. But were there really new jobs created that Trump wouldn't have been able to create too? Because Trump had a heck of a lot of jobs with a very low unemployment rate. In fact, it was one of the lowest unemployment rates ever for a president. And then it went lower now. But Trump was doing that and it was going even lower. And it was going lower across the board. It didn't matter your race. It was going lower. Like the restaurants that closed because they couldn't stay open during COVID and they were forced to have a temporary shutdown because of COVID, they weren't able to open. They weren't having customers come in the store, and not many customers were asking for deliveries if the restaurant could even figure out and did deliveries, because not a lot of sit-down restaurants actually have a delivery service. It takes, Uber Eats and Grubhub and all of them to help and assist with that. Those restaurants closed. Then when things got better, people were like, oh, well, there's a building over there that used to be the restaurant of whatever, no longer there, and I can rent it out cheap and we could start our own restaurant. And those jobs, they came back because of that. One restaurant closed and another took its place. I've seen it in my city. It happened. But there you have it, folks. That is the first one. We're going to get into the next topic and subject. I hope you guys continue to watch this. I don't want to keep it too long for each topic. So let's try to keep it under a half hour. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because we're bringing you nothing but the facts. And I will definitely be showcasing some things on both sides that aren't that great. But I'll see you guys in the next one.